Hi, this is Yogesh from Automotives Technica and welcome to my part 2 video where I'm going to show you the disk partition of this HP 15 BS145TU. This has got a FreeBSD operating system as I told you in my introduction part. But here if you see, there will not be any partition and this disk has got a simple master boot record partition which is a legacy. Since this laptop has EFI BIOS, it is good to partition the disk with GPT partition table and use a customized partition table so that we can install multiple operating system in the view of developers or who want to use a different operating system at a time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to customize my laptop with a GPT partition table and installing Windows as well as Ubuntu Linux side by side on the same disk. So if I say I have opened a terminal and I have booted this laptop with USB stick which is directly from the flash memory. I have downloaded the Ubuntu 18.04 ISO and created a bootable USB drive using Rufus on a Windows operating system and booted this laptop in Ubuntu Linux. So when I open a terminal and say sudo fdisk-l, it will show me the disk partitions which is previously done by the manufacturer. So SDA is the drive which is 1 terabyte, almost it is showing here 931.5 GB. So this is a 1 terabyte drive, and if you see, this has got a disk label called DOS. So this looks to be a simple MBR type of partition where you can see a star mark here as a boot flag, and this does not suit our needs because this has got a FreeBSD, and I'm going to remove these partitions using gparted. So the SDB1 drive is nothing but your USB drive from where I have booted the Linux Ubuntu. So what I have to do is I have to delete the SDA and SDA2 and clear up the disk so that I can use my own partition table, and I'm going to use GUID Partition Table, that is GPT, which is supported by EFI BIOS. So coming back, start gparted, which is an inbuilt utility in Linux. Delete the existing partitions starting with the highest one. And apply the operations. So when you apply, all the partitions which is given by the OEM will be deleted. You are going to lose the FreeBSD operating system, you are going to lose the HP documents which is pre-installed. Now if you see the details, the operation had been done, and when I close the gparted, and come back to the terminal, and if I say fdisk-l, why I am using sudo is because Linux Ubuntu doesn't give you administrative privileges without sudo prefix to the command. So here if you see the SDA, which is 931, does not have any partition. So coming back to the gparted, start the gparted once again and convert this partition table or create a new partition table. Now it is unallocated, that means it has got a partition table with master boot record which was previously done. We have to erase that. So go to the device and say create partition table. You will have a warning message. This will erase all data on the entire disk saying that SDA. So SDA is our drive, which is 1 terabyte. Now select GPT this time because, as I told you, this laptop supports UEFI. So we have to take the advantage of the EFI firmware BIOS. So select GPT and then say apply. So when you apply, it will erase the MBR and create a GPT initialization of the drive. I would recommend to use fdisk instead of gparted because as a developer you need to take the control on the partition table of the disk, not any utility. So I would always recommend to use fdisk, which is the low level disk partition utility, which is there from the olden days when the Linux was born. And the gparted will help you to create convert a master boot record, DOS based partition table to GPT. So once you are done with this, I would like to close this and start fdisk once again. And this time what you have to do is you have to select /dev/SDA, because SDA is your drive. Don't select SDB because SDB is your USB drive. So when you select SDA, P to display the partitions which are created, but I have erased all the partitions. Now when I say P, it will display the disk information. Now when I have created a partition of disk label type GPT, that means my master boot record, the previous information is been deleted and it is using GPT, that is GUID Partition Table, which is supported by EFI firmware. Now it is easy to do further partition using fdisk. So I'm going to tell you a basic partition. I'll just take the example of say n, type n for new. It will ask you the partition number, go for default as 1. Now the first sector is 34 because the previous information, the previous sectors are reserved by GPT for further partitions, because this will support many partitions when compared to MBR. So master boot record supports very few partitions, so primary and secondary will be a different, but here in this case you can have many primary partitions. So here if I say a default sector 34 and give a size of 550 M, so plus 550 M stands for 550 MB. So this will create a first partition of 550 M. You say S. Now if I print it, this will show me the first partition, which is 550 MB, and the type is Linux file system. So this Linux file system means it has taken a default partition type as Linux. So to change this partition, type T and capital L to list all the type. So starting from 1, that is EFI, the first partition what I always prefer is EFI system. So I will select 1. Now what happens here is, if you see the other type of partitions, see the Microsoft basic data, Microsoft Windows recovery environment partition type, and the Microsoft reserved. These things will come into picture when you are going to use Windows 10 operating system. So for UEFI based partition, the first partition should be a type EFI. So I'm selecting 1 for EFI system. So I say type T 1. So L is your information. So it will display the type of partitions to select. So I'm selecting 1. So I change the Linux file system to EFI system. Now if I say P print, it will show me an EFI partition. So what I have done is I have erased the OEM's partition table. I have created a GPT partition table using gparted, and using fdisk I have created the first partition of EFI, which is used by all the operating systems if you install a multiple operating system interface. Now coming back to new partitions, you can create as many partitions as you like, but just remember that you have to create only one EFI partition in the first part of the disk. So if you go ahead with creating partition. Say if you want to install Linux, let the first partition be the default, and I will prefer a 256 MB as a boot partition, or if you have a less space on the drive, or I would prefer 150 GB of /partition. So 150G is my Linux file system. I'm going to create another partition of size 16 GB. So I'll take the first sector as default, 16G. Yes. So I have created 3 partitions now. That is, one is EFI, one is 150 GB for Linux file system, and 16G file system is taken as Linux, but I have to convert it to swap because my RAM memory is 8 GB. So I'll convert this. Select this partition 3. For the codes, refer to the capital L list, and the Linux swap is 34. Sorry, it's the FreeBSD swap. The Linux swap is 19. So remember that you can have a flexibility of partitioning the disk to install multiple operating system. So I'm selecting I'll just quit from this and say 19. So you can see that I have converted the default partition type from Linux file system to Linux swap. Type W to save your work, and when you come out, you can start installing the Linux operating system on this and continue with different partition schemes on your own, or customize the partitions as you require. You can install as many operating system on this hard drive because you have created a large 550 MB of EFI partition, and it can accommodate many EFI files to boot either Linux, either FreeBSD, Windows 10. If you have any other operating system which is customized, you can install it in a separate partition. So I'm just going to close this video, and I will create my type of partition and show you a snapshot of it once I finish this. So thank you, friends. Please use GPT instead of MBR type. Use FDisk to display the information. Use gparted to delete the OEM partitions and customize your own partition. And use FDisk pack to customize your separate partitions for your operating system. Please subscribe my channel Automotrice Technica, and this will help me to create more videos, and thank you so much. Bye bye.